Livingston, and today I'm excited because I'm going to be talking to Jason Twill, who's based in Sydney, Australia. And Jason, you've been there now about 20 months, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. And so basically, just from what we were chatting about right before we got started, you were kind of telling me you've basically got two kids. They're younger. They're what, 7 and 9, I think you said. And
Yep.
okay, and so I wanted to just kind of dig in a little bit on what that process was like for you of deciding that you wanted to move abroad and then actually being able to kind of make that move. Because what I found is a lot of times, you've got people that end up moving abroad because they get an opportunity with the company they're already working with, or you also have a group of people that just want to move abroad, and so then they start looking for the opportunities. So I was hoping you could just kind of break down that process for us and what your experience was like with that.
Sure. I think it's important to note that I started in New York City, and at a point in around 2006, my wife and I decided to kind of check out the West Coast and relocate to Seattle. We had looked at Seattle, Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas, just because I love those cities.
Mm-hmm.
I wound up choosing Seattle because I had a few friends that I knew from my college days there. But that was a pretty cataclysmic change to go from Manhattan to Seattle.
Sure.
But it wound up being a fantastic place to raise kids, and I saw it for my career, and I do like green building development. Seattle was really a good epicenter for that kind of work. So, followed where the intellectual capital was and the stuff that you love to do. And you kind of make a network in that place, and you made some really good contacts with some job opportunities. One hit, and I flew across the country with my family then. Spent 6 years in Seattle. It's a great city, but with my kids being a little older, my wife and I were also interested in just we're pretty nomadic in giving our kids a different experience growing up and wanted to go international.
Mm-hmm.
I see my wife was pushing me a lot more than I was.
Oh, really?
I've always wanted to live abroad. I actually lived in Italy for a year, and I loved it. So I kind of wanted to have a different experience for myself and for my family. And so the willingness and desire to go abroad is very important because that will just drive everything else. So I, every time I would go away for a conference or for work over to London or South America, I would meet and network with some people with other global firms that did the work that I like to do, and interview them on what opportunities are on the horizon in those cities like Rio de Janeiro or London or Paris. And nothing really bit, but one friend of mine did go to Sydney to a company that I knew about that was really good. And when he moved down here, I called him a few months after he moved and expressed my desire to some point move abroad with my family. And if anything came on the radar at that firm, keep me in mind. So several months after that call, I got a call from a recruiter, and for two different roles. It was very strange, actually. I got a call for one recruiter for a global position and one for a regional position in Australia. And with my kids being 8 and 6 at the time, I didn't want to be globetrotting the world, 2 weeks, a month. It's important for me to be around them as a dad right now. So a regional role sounded much better because there's domestic travel, but flying in Australia is awesome. But that kick-started the kind of decision-making process with the whole family, not just me, but my wife and the kids being involved in this decision to kind of move to the other side of the planet. This is very far away. So one was getting a secure offer and negotiating that offer to ensure that the pay scale differentials between Australia and the U.S. with the currency changes, cost of living, which is really high in Sydney, so commensurately you get paid a higher salary. The minimum wage here is a little over $20 an hour, so that's why there's good equitable distribution of wages here, but it drives the cost of everything a little higher.
Sure.
And companies, pay you for that, compensate for that. So got an offer that I was comfortable with. The company is a global firm, so they're used to kind of bringing people around. Playing kind of your uniqueness card. How are you different to other people that could have just hired, in Australia? If you have unique skill sets or unique experience or knowledge set, and mine happen to be sustainable design and construction and development, an experience with like big urban projects, and they have a business that's growing called Urban Regeneration. So my experience was unique, that would have value that they probably couldn't have found within the marketplace. I think they were looking for about 8 months to fill a certain role.
Oh wow.
So that helped.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I had a stronger leverage point for negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
But once the offer was made, the package included KPMG, actually Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young handled all my visa work. So they took care of paying for the visa, running through the government stuff to get it's a 4-year work visa, so I'm down here on a work permit till 2017. They gave me relocation budget, so I had a budget to work with to kind of move my stuff over here.
Mm-hmm.
Deal with the relocation assistance program to find out the school systems, what neighborhoods I would like. By the way, we made this decision. None of us had ever been to Australia. The interview, I did a video interview over Skype and then over a full video conference with like 10 people and me sitting in a room by myself in Seattle. And the interview went really, really well. And the end of it, it's like, this is a really good fit. This is great, da da da. It's like, should we just fly you over here so you can see what Sydney's like? And I'm like, no, I'm good. It's like, that's postcards. Sydney. It's like, what do you want? Sydney, Australia. It's one of the top 10 cities in the world. I'm good. Because I was really busy with the family stuff. I couldn't just leave for a while. So, we came here sight unseen. So you do have to have some courage, and willingness to just kind of let yourself go and move somewhere across the world away from family and friends and just kind of melt into the culture and
Sure.
gain from the experience. And I love that stuff. So it's been a great journey. So we had to coordinate selling our home in Seattle, which was a big discussion because the market was pretty soft at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
what year was that?
To keep it and rent it. What's that?
What year was that?
This was 2013.
Yeah.
So we'd gone through the GFC, the global financial crisis, the real estate market in Seattle wasn't as badly hurt as other places, but it still wasn't like we were doing really well with our appreciation in our home. But we tested out the rental model, tested out the for sale model, and miraculously, about a month before we had to move, the market took a spike up. And we actually sold our house in a day for a lot more than we bought it. So it was actually a huge. I didn't want to feel like, I probably could have sold it for a lot more today because it keeps on appreciating. Sure. But I didn't want to deal with the headache of having to manage a rental property across the planet.
Yeah.
But we sold our house, got the kids and wife. They went to my in-laws' home in Minnesota for about 2 months. For the summer of 2013, and I was going to go down in July and kind of get it set up, get the house set up, get the school situation figured out, so when they arrived here, we just put our stuff into a house and, they had to go to school. The visa had a glitch because the government changed. This is kind of a detailed story, but the prime minister and the way the politics work here, the prime minister at the time was ousted at the time my visa was going through.
Wow.
And a moratorium was put on for immigration. So my visa was put on hold. And I got stuck in Seattle in summer, which is not a bad thing at all. Except that my wife and kids were in Minnesota. So I was living like a bachelor. Long story short, we got through that hurdle. I got a call, and within like a week, I flew down to Sydney, arrived, started work. They put me in a temporary, furnished apartment.
Mm-hmm.
It takes about 8 weeks for your goods to be shipped, from the day they leave your house in a shipping container to the day they arrive, because Sydney's pretty far away.
Yeah.
And they have to go through quarantine and all those other things. So there's all these rules about how you have a moving company that understands that, and they work you through all the quarantine stuff so that you don't pack things that would cause your furniture and stuff to be shot with radon.
Gotcha.
That was all learning experience for us, but. I found a rental. Once I started my work, I was on the ground. I had a relocation assistant would drive me around different neighborhoods. So I had done just some desktop research when I was in Seattle on what neighborhoods I thought I would like. And the one that I originally saw online that I liked is where we live in this amazing little neighborhood called Balmain, just like 5 minutes from the CBD. And I found a rental there, furnished. We moved in, spent a month and a half there until we found a permanent rental. And our goods had arrived by then, so we moved into this 3-bedroom place. And you had to learn the nuances of leasing an apartment or a home here. It's very different than the U.S.
Sure.
Everything's by the week. It's very, I guess, landlord friendly versus being very lessor, renter friendly in the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's a little different. But you just ask a million people how to do it, and you get help. And we had a little assistance, and we got a place. And we've been living in that place for about 17 months actually. And it's great. Once you settle in, it's obviously Australia is not too hard to acclimate to. It's very, I hate to use the word Americanized because it's got a beautiful culture. It's influenced by Britain, but it's influenced by massive immigration. So it's as culturally diverse as many other cities in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But they speak English, which is really easy for the kids and us. If a kid's getting a little bit of a dialect because they're young.
Yeah.
It took them a few months to acclimate to school, so they missed their mates, but they, were part of this decision. They were excited to come, so we got them on board. And after like 4 months of them being in the school, they established some good friendships, and it's all good. But there was a couple months where they were like not sure if they were happy here, and we just talked them through it and helped out with them making, hanging out with other parents of kids they go to school with, and
Yeah.
now they're just on cloud 9, and they want to stay here forever. They love it.
Oh, really?
And they play cricket. Of all sports, man.
So
I spend most of my Saturday mornings watching cricket.
So what are some of their favorite things about being down there?
Obviously the weather is pretty fantastic. So Sydney's like, it's got the cultural art and kind of urban intensity of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the beauty and natural scenery of Seattle, but it's got the weather of San Diego.
Oh.
So it's like, it's awesome. It's like I'm in shorts and t-shirt from October through June. I mean, most of the year is just like awesome weather.
Yeah.
But they have really good friends. We live in a really kind of old fabric neighborhood, so it's super walkable. All the kids are down the street, so the kids can just run down to the park when they hang out with like 5 of their buddies from school. So it's a really strong community.
Mm-hmm.
Neighborhood's about 200 years old, so we live in those all historic little cottages. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I purposely wanted that. I lived in a single-family home in Seattle. Moving from an apartment in Upper West Side, New York, was very different.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a kind of happy medium, which is more like a Brooklyn lifestyle, and that's kind of how we live here.
Yeah.
They love going to the beach all the time. They're picking up surfing. They're playing cricket. They're playing soccer. I coach the soccer team in my community, and they both play Division I soccer. And just, that we can go drive around and go camping, and there's kangaroos running around and like wallabies.
Yeah. How can you not like that?
My older son is really into animals and wildlife, so he just was researching Australian wildlife like crazy, from the reptiles to the insects and spiders to the marsupials, whatever it was. So when we got here, he could point out birds and animals like crazy, and like he taught us everything.
That's awesome.
It's great. He was like 8. He just loves that stuff. So he's happy here because of that stuff.
That's really cool.
My wife did not have a job when she got here, and she wanted to get the kids settled, but after we were here for about 4 months, I started networking her to some of my colleagues at my company, just to kind of, because she's an interior designer and architect, so we do development work. I kind of thought we could introduce her to some architecture firms, get her some ins, and it wound up, the person I connected her with and introduced her to people wound up hiring her.
Oh, wow.
So she works 2 desks away from me in the same company.
Oh, wow.
So we both have incomes here, which helps out, and it's expensive. So she has a really good job, and my job's been really demanding. And you gotta come with a mindset that you're moving to a new country, new culture, new company and just have an open mind and know that usually the first year is going to be really challenging because you're just kind of establishing yourself personally and professionally in a whole new place in the world. Mm-hmm. I had a really strong personal brand and industry credibility and recognition in the U.S., and I've come over here and nobody knows me, and I love that. I'm a kind of guy that loves that. So I want to just go network like crazy and build up my reputation and brand in a whole new place. And it's like, it's great.
I want to touch on that for a minute because you've actually probably mentioned networking, 4 or 5 times since we started talking, and it sounds like that was probably a key instrument into you being able to make the move abroad and probably even just your success in general. And my years past, I've always kind of dismissed the value of networking. And, it's just only been since recently that I really understand the value of it and how important it is and, kind of kick myself for not tapping into that sooner. But I was hoping that maybe you could just kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yep, I talk about it all the time. I mean, I do a lot of graduate school lectures and mentoring, and I mention networking on the top 3 most important things. And I usually use a statement that, and it's something I learned in New York, because to kind of make it in New York, the statement we always say is more important who you know than what you know sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I've heard it worded, I think before, it's not a what question, it's a who question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more networked you are politically, professionally, in your industry, you just have a lot more opportunities, and you have a lot more, I would say, influence to change things or open doors for you. Mm-hmm. It's helped me since I was in my early 20s. I started doing it, and my dad would talk to me about it. People I worked in New York would mentor me on networking, and I just, starting in grad school in my early 20s, I just kind of became a voracious networker. I saw the power of it when I was in grad school trying to kind of get into the real estate industry in New York. And I've never stopped. And I have even when I read someone's book, if I like their book a lot, I'll call the author up and I'll be like, I loved your book. I want to talk more about it. I want to know you.
That's awesome.
So I've built a pretty big global network of people around the world that, a lot of my research calls are people in Mumbai, Geneva, Seoul, and I have little friends all over the world now. It's great. So when I go to travel, I can call up somebody and say, "Show me your city." It's great.
That's really.
I've been doing that for like 12 years. You just gotta take the time to really nurture relationships and have interpersonal skills. Mm-hmm. And it's always about what's in it for us, not what's in it for me.
Yeah.
So it's like the reciprocity, and that kind of builds up a level of trust and rapport with people, and you can it's great.
Well, that's an interesting point that you made too, because I didn't even think about that when I started this project, but it's amazing how quickly I've amassed friendships and relationships now with people all over the world. I mean, just like you and I having this conversation here. You're in Australia. I don't know if we'll ever meet in person, but the fact that we're able to have this conversation is huge and fantastic. And it's so.
Italy, I'm in Italy, I will.
Yeah, exactly. So. I think that's neat. But I guess one of the other things too I wanted to ask on networking is it sounded like with your role that when you were in Seattle that you were doing a lot of international traveling to conferences and stuff like that. You mentioned South America. So did that also have a play into opening those relationships as far as you being able to meet people when you were abroad and that kind of thing?
Some of them did. So I worked for a company that was strongly rooted in Seattle, and it was Paul Allen's firm, who was the co-founder of Microsoft. So I worked for a company called Vulcan. So he was a multi-billionaire, private, venture capital, technology, real estate, and sports franchise company. We had the Seahawks and Sounders and Trailblazers. And so I would, I didn't travel directly for work per se, but I would be invited because of my skills on urban transformation or sustainability to conferences in London to go speak or do something, and I would, network like crazy while I was there, or hold a dinner party. So one of these things Paul has a club in London, and I did a lot of work on climate change communication, and he had a real strong passion for art and science and sports, and I wanted to look at. I started a nonprofit called the Green Sports Alliance, which looks at advancing sustainability through sport. And I hosted a dinner party at his club in London with like CEOs from Deloitte and other companies, an artist, a writer, fashion designer, to spark a conversation around, and a chess grandmaster. That was a cool one too.
Oh, that's cool.
To spark a conversation around how art and popular culture can change the way we communicate about climate change and some of these bigger crises we're facing. Instead of science talk, we can make it cool and plain Jane, language for people to really understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, for me, a big networking event. I had a buddy over there who I knew, and I was like, can you help me set this up? Call all your crazy people and have dinner. So I got to meet like 40 people in one night and create a really strong connection in the UK.
That's awesome.
And then Mexico, I would travel to do like urban sustainability tours of Sweden, Copenhagen, Mexico City, and you'd meet some local people on those.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, my time in New York, I built up a pretty big global relationships, and so I didn't have to travel a lot internationally for work. It was mostly for like junkets, like fun trips.
Sure.
I took advantage of those as best I could.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned South America. Have you what countries in South America have you been to?
I have not. I have only. Well, I counted Mexico on that. That's
okay, so Central.
I've been to South America.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious because
Mexico.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious because a lot of our audience is really big into South America, and a lot of the different countries like Ecuador, Uruguay, some of those countries in South America. So
that'd be awesome. I tried really hard to get a job in Rio, but I didn't speak Portuguese. So
so my wife has a cousin in Rio as well, so maybe we can make a connection there. She's got family, all over Ecuador, Italy, Brazil, and Argentina as well. And I'm probably forgetting somewhere.
That's huge, having that.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is huge.
How do you like Atlanta?
Yeah.
All those places.
It's funny. My wife and I always joke about, we basically feel like we got dumped here by our families, because her parents ended up moving here from Ecuador. She bounced from Ecuador to Italy, to Texas, back to Ecuador, and then back here to the States. And every time she moved, she had to relearn the language in whatever country she was going to. But she's trilingual now, and and then me, I'm originally from Texas, and so my dad, when I was younger, took a job out here, and moved out here when I was just a kid, and it's nice, it's fantastic. We're in the suburbs, so it's pretty quiet where we are and everything, but it's just not a city. Atlanta is not a community, in my opinion. We've got a lot of transplants, a lot of people that have moved here from other cities, and the communities, there's really not like a lot of just communities where you can get out, you can walk, you can do your shopping, those kind of things. You've got to get in the car to go everywhere. You're stuck in traffic, so it's just not a community, in my opinion. And that's one of the big reasons why we're always, thinking about moving abroad, is so that we can give our family a different quality of life, or a different perspective on what life can be.
Yeah. So I didn't want my kids to have an American-centric view of the world. America is pretty insular when it talks about media and culture and everything else. It's very inward-looking, navel-gazing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up too, because I first traveled abroad in 2001. That was my first trip. It was to Ecuador with my wife, and I remember. I didn't really have any knowledge of other countries. The only knowledge I really had was of Ecuador, because I had heard about it from her, and I didn't know what I was getting into when I got down there. And then I remember one morning I was sound asleep, and her cousins started shaking me, and they said, "Wake up, wake up! Your country's being attacked." And I got my glasses on in time to see the second tower get hit, and then it just opened my eyes to the rest of the world from that minute on. To the point that you were making, before that, I noticed right after that, basically the media just completely, changed to where all of a sudden you're learning about all these other countries and stuff. but yeah, it is. It is different. When you get abroad, you learn all kinds of things about other countries, even the country that you're not actually located in at that time. So
it's important to discern whether you're a tourist or a traveler, or you're actually like, I felt like I was a tourist here for a couple months, but then you really start to get into the culture, the sports that they watch, the language differences, some of the fun little quirky things they do,
hmm
and you become part of it. I love. So I learned I got sent abroad when I was in high school from a great teacher that was looking out for me, sent me to Barcelona for 4 months on a scholarship for language. And I just immersed myself with this family on this coastal town south of Barcelona. That I was the only gringo in the town. I had to adapt and speak Spanish and fall in love 20 times with beautiful Spanish girls.
Oh yeah, 20 times a day, right?
Yeah. And then that just fueled me to kind of just go around the world and do that more and more. So when I went abroad in college, I spent a year in Italy, and I just melted into the Italian culture. And it's been itching for it again. So
what part of Italy?
Florence.
Okay, yeah. It's funny. We almost made it to Florence on my last trip. I've been to Italy 3 times now, and I've still only been to Rome because of all the family that we have there. It's like every night we've got a different invitation.
It's like a 3-hour train ride to Florence. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's very close. Yeah, and we just always end up spending all our time with family over there. But so my wife and I promised each other that the next time we make it over there, we're gonna actually see more of Italy than just Rome. So, it's interesting though too. You were talking about just kind of how you just kind of had that itch, I guess, to get back abroad. It's something that I can't explain myself, and so I'm just wondering, do you have I don't know, do you have any kind of words that you could put to that? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, and when I'm talking to other Americans here that don't have that, I can't really explain it or express it to people, and I feel like people are looking at me like I've got 3 heads.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta. So I have what I call I'm an omnologist, and I love everything. So I study sciences, geology, biology. I love everything. So part of me wants to be an anthropologist, archaeologist. So I love studying cultures. I love being just kind of immersing myself in other cultures. So it's part of my DNA. And the work that I do is around world change. And for me to understand world change, I got to understand lots of different parts of the world and how people perceive it. And the more you travel, the more you learn other cultures, the more tolerant you are of other people's faiths, religions, creeds, philosophies. And you start to create a more global, I guess, mindset, which I love. I hate being defined as like I'm from America. It's like I'm from the earth, man. Like we're all living on the same fucking ball. And I kind of operate like that, and I go around and engage people like that. So I'm never coming with pretenses. And people here really appreciated that. Americans are pretty well known outside of America to be arrogant.
Yeah.
Pretty domineering. And the way I engage people here, they said they really appreciated it. I'm very respectful of culture. I don't talk down. I mean, there's a way that Americans perceived abroad, and I felt that when I lived in Europe big time. So everyone wore Canadian patches. You're almost embarrassed to be American when you're abroad sometimes, depending on where you are in the world. But,
so do you think the key to people perceiving you that way is being inquisitive, maybe? Having an inquisitive mind and asking a lot of questions and just engaging?
Yeah.
Okay.
And not comparing all the time, but and I think being from New York really helps anywhere you go, man, because everyone looks anywhere. I think I see more Yankee hats here in Sydney than I do anywhere in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got out of a speeding ticket because I told the guy I was from New York, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to get a ticket to a New Yorker." It's funny, but like helping them understand and appreciate their own country more. Because everyone's like, why'd you leave New York? New York's the best. I'm like, why would you leave Sydney? Like, this is 10 times more livable city than New York. It's like, you guys stop looking outward and look right here. It's like, there's a reason why Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, and Perth are consistently on the top 10 world's most livable cities lists every time. And it's because of the weather, it's because of the people, it's the food, the culture. And the livability. I mean, you can get around quickly. It's accessible. Like they talk about traffic here, but it's like it's not New York traffic. It's like, yeah, you got some traffic, but I don't even notice it.
Right. Yeah. I noticed that even when I travel to other cities, you know, in the United States, they'll talk about the traffic in that city or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, what are we talking about? And they're like, oh, 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay, well. All right, you know, go to Atlanta and sit in their rush hour for an hour and a half, and you know.
Yeah. Or they'll talk about the beach being too crowded, and I'm like, go to fucking Jersey, man. You can't even like get a towel on the beach. It's like you gotta pay. You gotta have a badge. It's just like helping them appreciate. I mean, I just had an experience I was in Tasmania doing some community development work with some high school students. And they were like awestruck that I was from New York. So I spent like 2 hours talking about New York. But at the end of 2 days with them, they were so much more appreciative of where they live. And I was like, I would have freaking killed to have been raised where you guys are being raised. It's paradise. It's like you're being raised in one of the most remarkable scenic places in the world. It's like,
well, you know, it's interesting because I hate to have the mindset or the idea of the grass is greener on the other side, but I do think that there are core things that you have to take into consideration. I mean, right now in Atlanta, we got snow on the ground right now in Atlanta, and you know, me personally, I hate cold weather, absolutely hate it. And so if I could be on the equator year round, or you know, somewhere like Malta where it never gets below 55 degrees, you know, that's paradise for me. I'll take 100-degree weather, and I'm sure there's other people who are like, you know, I don't want 100-degree weather. I'd rather deal with the cold or whatever. But I think what I've found, you know, as I've gone over, because one thing that drives me nuts is when I hear Americans talk about how the United States is the greatest country on earth. I think that, and this is not a knock on the United States or anything. I think the United States is fantastic, and there's a lot of things that I'm appreciative of, and I love the United States. But at the same time, I think it's a matter of priorities. I think you have to say, you know, you've got to identify in your own personal life and your own personal goals, you know, what are your priorities and how would you rank those, and then where are you going to find those? And I think that there's give or take in certain countries. You know, there's going to be things that you probably don't like about Australia, and there's going to be things that you absolutely love. And, you know, the same for the United States or any other country, really.
So have you seen the newsrooms opening pilots where Jeff Daniels does his soliloquy on why America is not the greatest country on earth?
I have not. I'm going to have to look that up.
YouTube it.
Okay.
YouTube, you know, why America's not great. You know, Jeff Daniels, the newsroom, and he articulates it really, really. It's Michael Sorkin, the guy who did The West Wing, and he very articulately pointed out the specific reasons why. And it was like, you know, it's not about freedom, because Canada's got freedom, and South Korea's got freedom. All these countries have freedom, and their test scores, their health and vitality rates are higher than ours. It's like, you know, I think we outperformed the world in two things, and it was number of people incarcerated and military spending, and we outspend by a factor of 4 the next 3 countries who are our allies, or something like that. It's like, you have to. It's really good.
I will check.
I sense that. I started sensing that when I was about 10 years old, and I would get in arguments with my family about it, and that arrogance, the American arrogance, and it's well known around the world. I mean, everywhere I've traveled, I've felt it and seen it.
So how did your family react to you guys moving down there?
Oh, they were sad, but they were like, I mean, I had already moved away to Seattle.
Sure.
My family's in New York. My wife's family's in Minnesota. My wife's family is ecstatic. They're like, go away, go everywhere you want. My family's more, you know, they were like sad to be so far away, but they're excited.
Yeah.
My mom's coming to visit. My in-laws visited. So that when if people want to come to Sydney, it gives them an excuse, you know. So it's great.
Yeah, it works out great for them at that point, right? Yeah, that's great. Well, I guess, really, I know we got to start wrapping up, and I don't want to take too much of your time. But I guess let me just ask, like, for anybody that wants to move to Australia, what advice would you give to them?
Just do the research. It's you got to be driven. I think it helps when you know your purpose. For your work purpose or just your core purpose of what you want to do in the world, and finding the right fit for a company here or a job opportunity that really fits like a glove. Because you are moving across the world, and I love the work I do, so it was easy for me to kind of just like jump in with both feet. Mm-hmm. And when you engage with somebody on an opportunity here and you're across the world, the more laser focused you are on your purpose and the work that you want to do in the world and how it aligns with the aspirations of that company, just helps kind of separate you from the pack, I think. That's key. And just doing all the research. There is the avenue of getting a little temporary visa and then working from the ground here, or just doing Skype calls like this. I chose the latter way of doing it, just kind of working from Seattle to do it and leverage who I knew down here, and made some good connections and fired my resume off on lines in different places. Most global firms have really good recruitment websites, so you can kind of look at what's going on and post things, and that was it.
Yeah, that's huge. That's great. I actually know somebody who did it the other way. She moved down, and then I don't remember all the details or whatever, but at some point she ended up having to come back because her time had run up. And I think she made it back one more time, but it's something that she's constantly battling with. And she loves Australia too, absolutely loves it. And what's interesting is she's actually originally from Colombia, and then ended up in the United States, and then over to Australia. So
cool.
Yeah, interesting. So last question then, I guess, really would be just: are you thrilled with being down there? Is it something that you would do over again? And what kind of plans do you have for the future as far as, do you want to stay in Australia? Are you thinking to move somewhere else? What kind of...
Right now, it's about my children and giving my children stability in one place so they can develop really long-lasting relationships and be in a community where they have a lot of mentors around them, which is really important for me.
Yeah.
So if we're dealing with the schools right now, if we get the right school, we're looking to buy a place, and then we'll stay put until they go to university.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's my view of the world. My wife would say that if an opportunity came up in Europe, she'd raise her hand, but I don't want to do that. I'd easily stay here for another 10 years, and then look to go to Europe. I think the next place we want to live in the world is Europe.
That's awesome.
I love Europe.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's interesting.
We're lucky because we have offices in the UK and France and Italy, and so
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I guess with your wife working at the same company too, that gives you some opportunities there. That's great. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Is there anything else that you want to share with anybody, or pretty much covers it all?
No, man, just follow your dreams.
Yeah.
Find your dreams and go follow them, and go at it with full abandon. It's just awesome.
That's awesome.
Tackle life, go on.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate it, Jason, and can't thank you enough.
All right, man. Have a good one. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good luck going abroad, man.
I appreciate it.
It'll happen. See you, bud.
All right.